How long does it take for your business to sell? One of the first questions every business owner asks when they start thinking about selling is how long is it going to take? And that's a fair question. If you're planning around a retirement date or a health situation or simply at the point where life is ready to move on, then timeline matters. The honest answer is it depends. But in this video, I'm going to give you some realistic picture of what the timeline looks like, what the main stages take, and what, just more importantly, what can cause delays and how to avoid them. Let's use the house buying comparison one more time, because it's quite useful here. When you put the house on the market, there are two separate phases. The first one is finding the buyer, which could take days or months, depending on the market, the property and the price. And the second is conveyancing process. After the offer has been accepted, which typically takes 8 to 12 weeks. Selling your business works the same way. There's the time it takes to find the right buyer, and then there's the formal process after heads of terms are signed. These are two different timelines, and it's worth understanding both. If you're selling through a broker, your business will be listed on the marketplace and marketed to buyers in the network. How long this takes to find a buyer varies enormously, from a few weeks to a year or maybe more. Some businesses track immediate interest, others sit on the market for a very long time. If you're selling privately and directly, which is how Hazel Property Group operates, your timeline for finding a buyer depends on how proactively you're approached. A direct buyer who has specifically sought your business will often move faster than a buyer who's responded to a listing, because they already have decided that's the sector that they want to be in even before they speak to you. The key point is this: finding the buyer is not something you can fully control or predict, which is why starting the process early than you think is always the right call. Phase 2 is the heads of terms. Once the heads of terms are signed, the formal process begins. For a straightforward deal, this takes 2 to 4 months. Here's roughly how the timeline breaks down. Weeks 1 to 2, information requests are sent, data rooms are set up, financial due diligence begins. Your accountant and the buyer's accountant are reviewing the numbers. Weeks 2 to 6, due diligence is underway, legal due diligence is running alongside, queries are coming back and forth, and the sale agreement starts to be drafted. Weeks 4 to 10, the sale agreement is negotiated between the two sets of lawyers, disclosure letters are prepared, the warranties are agreed. Weeks 8 to 12, final sign off on the agreement. Completion documents are prepared, completion day documents signed electronically, funds are transferred. That's the timeline in a smooth, well-run deal. In the practice, most deals take a lot longer than the optimistic estimate. 3 to 5 months is more realistic average for a straightforward SME transaction. So what causes the delays? In this part of the video, that could save you a lot of frustration. Most delays in the business sales are predictable and avoidable. And here's one of the main ones: slow responses from the seller. This is the single biggest cause of delay. When the buyer's team sends an information request and it takes 2 to 4 weeks to get a response, everything slows down. The buyer's lawyers are waiting, the accountants are waiting, and the momentum goes out the deal. Being organised, responsive is one of the single most effective things a seller can do to keep the deal on track. Property. If the business has commercial lease, the landlord usually needs a consent of change of ownership. Landlords move at their own pace. They may want references, guarantees, or simply take their time reviewing the request. This can add weeks or even months to a transaction and is largely outside everyone's control. If you know there's a lease involved, flag it early and get the landlord process started as soon as possible. Inexperienced lawyers. An M&A transaction has its own conventions and standard positions. When one side has a lawyer who isn't experienced in business sales, they can spend a lot of time pushing back on things that aren't entirely normal, or drafting amendments that experienced lawyers on both sides could have resolved over a quick phone call. Choose your specialist, and if you can, use the lawyer that the buyer has worked with before. Unexpected issues in due diligence. If something significant comes up during due diligence, a tax liability, a contract issue, or a deployment dispute, it needs to be worked out through before the deal can proceed. This doesn't necessarily kill the deal, but it takes time. The best way to avoid it is to know your own business thoroughly before you start and to be transparent about anything that might come up. Renegotiation. If your diligence throws up something that changes the buyer's view of the price or the payment terms, there may be a period of negotiation. It's normal and manageable, but it adds time. Deals where both sides have been straightforward with each other from the start tend to avoid this. Seller's hesitation. It does happen. Sellers get cold feet. The closer the completion gets, the more it feels real. And some sellers, they start slowing down the deal, not responding to emails, asking for extensions, raising new concerns. If the seller makes sure that you're genuine ready to before you start, pulling back out at the late process is expensive and damaging to relationships. How to keep things moving? Based on everything above, here's what you can do as a seller to keep the deal on track. Get your paperwork in order before you start. Accounts, tax returns, contracts, leases. Respond quickly to information requests. Involve your accountant and lawyer early. Don't wait until the heads of terms are signed. Be transparent about anything that might come up in due diligence. Choose your lawyer who specialises in SEE transactions. If there's a property lease involved, start with the landlord's consent. Process as early as possible. Stay engaged throughout. Don't hand it over and wait. To give you a clear picture, finding the buyer anywhere from a few weeks to several months. Heads of terms to completion, 2 to 4 months. Heads of terms to completion on a typical deal, 3 to 5 months. Heads of terms to completion where there's complications, 6 months or more. If you're working to a specific date, a retirement, a health situation, a financial deadline, build in more time than you think you need. The process has lots of moving parts, and even well-run deals occasionally hit unexpected delays. The business owner who hits their target dates are almost always the ones who started early than they felt necessary. Selling the business takes time, but with the right preparation, the right team around you, and a clear understanding of what happens at each stage, it doesn't have to feel slow or uncertain. In the next video, I'm going to cover what an earn-out is, what it means and when it's used, and how to think about it when a buyer puts one on the table. If you'd like a conversation about your situation, the link is down below.